Welcome back to Casa. I'm Jorge. For a few years now, you've seen me create all sorts of concrete orbs. These beautiful art sculptures are a wonderful way to adorn the garden and add curb appeal to the landscaping. Well, today I have two new special projects that I think you are going to love. So, without further ado, let's get started. To create our cement orbs, we're going to be using some balls. I like to use deflatable balls that I can easily take out and reuse for a future project. In this case, I am going to be using a dollar beach ball for the small one. For the larger one, I'm just taking one of these larger like yoga balls that I can easily deflate and use for future ones. Now I'm going to be working on top of placing them rather on top of a bucket with some water just so that it feels more stable. As I start to add cement, it's going to get a bit heavier, so I want to make sure that it's not going to tip over or crack or anything. So step number one is I'm going to wrap the entire ball with some fiber tape. This is cement board joint tape, and this is typically used for cement boards or like if showers or things like that. I will link everything that I use in the description, of course. And then I'm going to use some hoops. The hoops are going to kind of create an opening when I start to create the cement ball here. I like to get these from Dollar Tree. There's 3 in a pack for $1. There's 3 different sizes, of course. I'm going to be using the medium one and the small one, but you can get like a hoop from the floral store or even on Amazon, which I will of course include below. Let's start wrapping. This is going to take a little bit of time, but I think the result is going to be well worth it. Anyways, now that I'm done clowning around, it's time to get serious and wrap these balls with the cement mesh fiber tape. This tape has 2 sides. One side is sticky, one side is not. I am tightly wrapping the balls with the sticky side towards the ball so that it has a nice grip and it does not move around. Notice I'm leaving the inflation hole exposed. This will be important in the future so that I can take out the ball properly. Last one. And there we have it. Perfect. Time to do the smaller one. This can get pretty tedious, so it's perfect for maybe putting on a podcast, listening to some music. Notice I am folding the end of the tape into the hoop to make sure that it does not move around. And with that, we are now ready for our first layer of cement. I'll do a breakdown of all of the supplies that I used and how much, but I don't measure anything, so it really will be rough estimates. It really doesn't matter all that much. Once you start working on the project, you can start to feel how the concrete or slash cement is starting to work. But the first layer is going to be the slurry. It'll be involving all-purpose cement mix, then this bonding adhesive. This almost acts like a concrete glue for the different layers, and then of course some water, and mix it together in a large bowl. Of course, wearing some PPE as we don't want to come in contact with uncured cement dust. So I mix it all together to almost create a thick paint consistency. This will allow me to brush it onto the surface of the ball. I've gotten some questions in the past regarding the brand of the cement that I use. It doesn't really matter. I just make sure that the package says all-purpose cement. So I've used this stuff that I showed, plus I've also used Cement All, but it really doesn't matter. Now this is not the same thing as the concrete mix, so making sure it says cement mix. All right, friends, so it is the next day and the cement orbs here have dried. I gotta tell you, they're looking pretty good. They're a little bit rough. That's okay. They're not supposed to look perfect right now. I will say there's a little bit of cracks here and there. That's totally okay at this particular point. We'll go ahead and fill all of that up later. I'll get started on the second layer mix. I'll call this the paste mix. This will involve all-purpose cement mix, some sand, preferably fine sand, next some bonding adhesive, and some water. I want the consistency for this mix to be thick, but not too thick, almost like a mortar, if you will, where you can apply it on a vertical surface, but it won't droop down. A little trick I've used over the years is to take a spray bottle with some water and lightly spray the previously dried surface before adding the new layer. I find the new concrete to go on a lot easier this way. I find this layer best applied with a putty knife. It could be plastic or metal, it doesn't really matter, sort of troweling it onto the surface. And some of this excess, I can just put it back into the bowl. It's still good. Notice it's starting to dry out a little bit. I'm just gonna add just a tiny bit more water. I like to have an extra bucket with some water to occasionally rinse my hands. And you see all that pile up right here? I'm kind of cleaning that up. We're gonna address the other side once this one dries. We'll flip it over and do that. But we want to make sure there isn't a big pile up right here because then that'll make it uneven and it'll get stuck to the bucket. This definitely requires a lot of patience, but I think it's well worth it for me. It's a few minutes later and the concrete is beginning to set and become slightly harder. This is the perfect time to go in with the knife and smooth the surface. And then right here, I just like to take my finger and just outline the ring just like that. So I'm just going to let this one sit out to cure, to dry, probably a few hours. It probably won't be until tomorrow until I do the bottom side that I will flip over. But just making sure that it looks nice and perfect. All right, the small one is done. Now let's tackle this big one right here. Of course, I am wetting it beforehand. Not soaking it, but just giving it a nice mist so that it absorbs it a lot better. All right, so it is the following day, and let me tell you, the orbs are nice and hard, but I still need to do the bottom side, or top side rather, so I'm gonna flip it over and do the same thing. And again, just trying my best to make it look nice and smooth. I'm still considering this layer number 2. Remember, we only did half of it. Now we're doing the rest. Same mix, same consistency, same patience. A large orb like this has more surface area, and it might be a good idea to make small batches and work in sections, as we don't want the concrete to set before we get through it all. Now I am blending the new concrete with the existing already dried concrete with a mist of water and rubbing it with my hands. You know, things might look a bit different around here because, well, they are. I'm gonna be honest with you, it's been a couple of months since I last touched this project. Life happens, winter occurred, I got busy, but I am back and I am determined to complete this project just in time for this outdoor season and add some sculptural pieces to the landscaping. So let's just pretend it is the next day, because honestly, we really just need the concrete to dry before applying the next layers. We can just pretend it's the next day, no problem. Except there was a little bit of an accident, a mishap, if you will. Let me show you. So I'm gonna work on this table now just because it'll be easier for me, but as you can see for the smaller orb, it broke. I accidentally dropped this and this concrete kind of broke off. That's okay. This can be fixed with more concrete. Don't worry, this will not hurt the integrity of the finished product. It'll still be strong, so that is okay. And then there was also like a little hole there, but this is all gonna get covered, and with the layers of concrete, that will further add strength to the orbs. Let's mix up another batch and start adding more layers. For this third layer, the mix will basically be the same as for the second layer, which was cement, sand, bonding adhesive, and some water. And well, you mix it all together and you know what? It's the best. You'll get the best of, well, concrete. If you work with cement a lot like I do, I think it's worth getting one of these mixing drill attachments. You just put it into the drill. Makes life so much easier. I think we can just breeze through this part. It's pretty much similar to that second layer where you mist it with some water, then add the concrete mix. Notice I am able to patch that breakage here with the new concrete. It fixes it right up. No one will ever know, and in fact it might even be stronger than it was before. And of course, I also added that third layer of concrete, the paste mix, to the large orb. Let that fully dry, and now it is the next day, and well, I think we can add a bit of design and really just take these to the next level. So what I'm going to do for the large orb is create almost like a ribbed effect. I'm using some thick poly blend rope, some Gorilla Glue, and hot glue to adhere it to the surface. Now the Gorilla Glue will hold it onto place, I guess, in the long run, and the hot glue will hold it onto place for now. But honestly, it doesn't really matter since this will be encased with several layers of concrete and it will not be moving around, which, by the way, I forgot to mention, this entire step right here is purely optional. This is where the art comes into play, if you will, where you can add design, add interest, add a sculptural quality to these rather than just being a plain sphere. Again, totally optional, but I think this is the most fun part of it all. And now this large orb is ready for the next layer of concrete. But before I do that, I'm just going to remove the yoga ball. I've determined that this orb is strong enough as it is to hold its weight, but it's still fragile, so I'm being careful. Honestly, just popping it right out. It really is that simple. Just deflating it, maybe even using a pump to deflate it faster, and pulling it right out. It doesn't really stick to the tape as you would think it does. But now we have this large hole. So what do? We cover it up, of course, for two reasons. One, I think this will help it structurally, and it will also help keep the critters out. So I cut up a round piece of plywood that will fit it perfectly and just gluing it on with the glue, of course. And finally, which I don't think was necessary, but I'm doing it anyways, is adding some silicone or some of this Alex Flex stuff to basically seal it up. What about the small orb? Well, let's give her a crown as she deserves. So I'm going to glue some of these, I guess, concrete dots, as I like to call. This is a sort of a motif throughout some of my work. I think it's fun, it's playful, and it adds a bit of interest. So I added this floral hoop at the top just as a little guide to make sure things are nice and even. I could stop there, but why stop there? And we can add more fun with some rope. I think the fun about art is letting it take you on a journey where you might not know where you end up. So I cut some of these pieces, glue them around the little dots, and created an interesting form, a bit of a reference to mid-century modern or brutalist forms, if you will. I think it's fun. I'm quite pleased with the design, so I'll flip it over, remove the beach ball, which we could totally use for a future project, by the way, and cover it up with the plywood, making sure it's not going to go anywhere with that glue. Of course, we are now ready for our fourth concrete, or in this case, maybe cement layer. This fourth concrete layer is slightly different and optional. I'm choosing to do it because it will cover up the added details or rope that I added quite nicely, and this will consist of Henry's feather finish. If you don't have that, you could certainly use the all-purpose cement, add some bonding adhesive and some water. This is actually very similar to the very first layer that we ever added to the orbs. It's kind of like a slurry, but just slightly thicker, and I'm brushing it on just like paint.
the same applies to this smaller orb covering the entire surface. You can already tell it's looking more uniform, which is great.
Really quickly, I do want to talk about this little, well, actually large orb that I made a few years ago, maybe even last year actually. There's a YouTube video on this if you want to see it, but it's one of my favorite pieces. It's rust treated and overall it's holding up very well. I keep it around year round. Mind you, we get really cold winters and really hot summers here and a lot of wind also. So it withstands the elements and the patina's even gotten more beautiful over time. One thing that I do like to do once or maybe twice a year is give it a spray of this stuff, Thompson's Water Seal waterproofing spray. This just helps repel some of the water and I think it ultimately will help prolong the life of this, but so far so good. No cracks, no anything. I will say when you spray the stuff, it looks, I think it might be oil based, that's why, but it will look wet for a few days, but once it starts to dry out, the patina will come back and it will look normal. It is the next day and the concrete layer is now dry. Honestly, it looks great. This could even be a good stopping point in terms of the concrete, but I am thinking about the long-term lifespan, the life of this thing. I really want this to be durable. I'm gonna add one more layer of concrete to this just to make it extra secure and strong, and then we'll proceed with a color treatment. But overall, I'm very pleased with how it's coming along. It's very sculptural and yeah, I'm very excited for this. Now this type of project certainly requires a lot of patience and love, but I really love the outcome of this.
Notice that for these layers 5 and 6, I'm essentially just making that paste mix, which is the cement, sand, bonding adhesive, and water. However, this time I'm making the mix just so slightly more runny. It makes it easier to apply with a thick brush rather than the putty knife, as I've discovered for these grooves.
Concrete is now dry. I could stop here, but I'm just going to top it off with just a light coat of Henry's Feather Finish with bonding adhesive. That mixture will just give it a nice sort of smooth layer, give it that finished look.
I call this final layer the textured skim coat. It requires Henry's Feather Finish. Alternatively, I could use the all-purpose cement followed with some bonding adhesive and some water. I'm dabbing it onto the surface. It almost creates like a textured leathered effect. It's quite interesting. I've set the orbs aside to dry for about a day, and now I am ready to add some color. There are a few options when it comes to coloring cement. There are topical stains, there are penetrating stains, you can even use latex paint. But I think this large sculpture will be so pretty with an oxidized bronze paint solution, don't you think? Of course, I'm priming it properly to make sure it goes on nicely. Then I'm going to use this stuff by Modern Masters. This is really, I think it has actual bronze particles in it that will be oxidized soon. It's very pricey, but I believe they sell smaller sizes of this stuff.
All right, so I have my orb here. It is, well, the first coat is dry. Next up, I'm gonna follow instructions and I'm gonna apply a second coat of the bronze here. The first coat had great coverage, so it's just gonna be a light coat. Then followed by, this is the green patina agent solution. Like I said, I use this stuff a lot, so I buy in bulk. Of course, important to wear some PPE. This is, I believe, acid, so we definitely don't want to get this on our skin, our eyes, and all of that.
I don't know why, but I always find this part a bit nerve-wracking, but I'm following the instructions and I'm supposed to apply the green aging solution within the first 5 minutes of applying the second coat of the bronze paint, I believe. And honestly, I feel like this is, I don't know, it's kind of a mess, but as you can already see, it's starting to develop that green, beautiful patina. I'll set that aside and let it do its own chemical reaction. In the meantime, I can work on these small orbs. I'm going to do something similar but different. I do like the whole patina idea, so I'm going to do a rusted iron effect. This time I'm using some liquid iron from Sydney Harbor Paints. Quite pricey, but I do think the result will be worth it. Then I'm going to add the instant rust, which is going to be the essentially rust activator. Essentially, it's the same process as the oxidized iron paint effect.
All right, that first coat is now dry, and this second coat is going to be kind of important because pretty soon after I will be applying the rust activator, which is going to, of course, rust it, and it has to be applied rather quickly before I think it dries, or maybe it dries to the touch, and then it'll, of course, start doing its thing.
As we finish this up, I just want to say that creating these art sculptures has been an act of love. Now, I would be lying if I said this is the easiest DIY project in the world. I would say it requires patience and a lot of love, as I typically say. If you want to create these yourself, I would suggest starting with something smaller, a small beach ball, so that you can get the hang of it, as the first try isn't always going to be the most perfect. But if you embrace imperfection, this is certainly a good project to do so. I truly appreciate your patience with me in this video, so let's take a look at the final result.
Well friends, these orbs are now complete. I gotta tell you, I absolutely love the final result. Really quickly, let's talk about how to care for these. And honestly, very simple. Now, other orbs that I've made in years past, I leave them year round in the harsh elements here, and they really withstand everything, no cracks or anything. But one thing that I like to do once or maybe twice a year is to spray it with some of this stuff. This is Thompson's Water Seal. It really just helps waterproof it. I think it's just a great idea to protect the orbs. I think this is oil based, and when I spray it, it does look wet, but it takes a few days to dry, and then the patina comes right back. But literally, it's all that simple. I think these art sculptures really elevate the landscaping, and they were actually a lot of work, but the result was well worth it to me. But I do have a lot of orbs myself, so for the right price, I will actually sell these. So I will link them in the description if you are interested in these. I'll also be linking other orbs that I have made. Let me know which of these two is your favorite. I'm curious to know if you have more ideas, or if you want to see more orb videos, maybe different versions, or maybe something a bit simpler. Definitely let me know. I'm happy to work on more. Also, check out my online home decor shop, casarefinedshop.com. I will be launching artwork very, very soon. Thanks again so much for watching. I hope that you have a lovely day, a good season, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.